Hello all, welcome to this new series of tutorials on Spring. In this series we'll be discussing all the basics of Springs and we'll be also doing some examples to check what Spring basically does and its various functionalities. So in the first tutorial, first of all, we'll be just discussing some introduction on Spring framework. Then after this we'll be setting up the environment, and we'll also visit a core Java functionality that is polymorphism, and we'll discuss what is polymorphism because we need this and we need a basic understanding of polymorphism to start with the Springs. And after this we'll be discussing a basic example on Spring, and we'll be discussing inversion of control, that is IOC, and dependency injection. We'll see what these are. These are the core of Spring framework: inversion of control and dependency injection. So let's go ahead and let's see what is Spring framework. So Spring is basically a framework, and it is based on Java, and it was developed in February 2013 by Rod Johnson. And the Spring framework makes the easy development of Java EE applications like servlets and JSPs. Spring framework is also used to develop Java Enterprise Edition applications. And so why Springs? We already had servlets and JSP technologies to develop web applications, and now this is the new concept and new framework introduced. And so why we use Springs? And Springs basically enables developers to develop enterprise class applications using Pojos. And Pojos are basically plain old Java objects. We'll discuss what they are later. And the next advantage of Spring is they basically make the testing of applications easy and simple. And basically it reduces the coupling between two classes. Now I'll show you. First of all, we'll discuss Pojo. What is a Pojo? A Pojo is basically a plain old Java object. And suppose if you had a class, if your class is public class employee, and basically this is a simple Pojo in Java. A Pojo is a plain old simple object. If we go by the definition of Pojo, it says a Pojo basically signifies that the given object is an ordinary Java object and it is not a special object. Basically a Pojo doesn't have to go through all the lifecycle methods and all. And see, the conditions of Pojo are: it should not extend any Java class, it should not implement any Java interface. So this is basically a simple object in Java. And if you must have seen, and if you must have developed any servlet application, and in that servlet, if you create a servlet, then basically each servlet, suppose if you have a login servlet, that always extends a class called as HTTP servlet. And if you extend this, it will go through all the lifecycle methods of the servlet. Suppose servlet has a lifecycle. First of all, init method gets called. Then after this you have your service method which gets called, and service method in turn calls the do get or do post method. And in the end, destroy methods gets called. So this is basically the life cycle of a servlet, and this is not a simple Pojo. It is extending a class called as HTTP servlet. So if you are extending or implementing a servlet class, implementing any class or interface, then you basically have to go through the lifecycle methods and all. Similarly in EJBs also, if you implement any EJB interface, then you have to go through the lifecycle methods, and this makes a testing a bit difficult. So that's why in Spring we use plain old Java objects, and whatever objects or thing it needs, we just give it through a beans.xml. We just inject the dependency which it needs. Right now, just do not go into the technical details, just think that Pojo is simply a plain old Java object, and we also have Pojo beans. A Pojo bean is basically, now suppose we created our employee class earlier. A Pojo bean is basically a reusable component, and Pojo bean will basically be having private variables, like suppose each employee has a name, and each employee will be having employee ID. So a Pojo bean will be having a private variables and public getters and setters. And if you've ever created a Pojo bean, then you know the basic syntax of creating getters and setter method is, I'll create one getter and setter for the name variable only to show you. So basically the syntax is, for getter you have the access modifier as public, and then the return type is string. For getter, first of all you have to use get, then the name of the variable whatever you are having, its first alphabet will be capitalized. So in name we'll just simply write name. You can see up here its first alphabet is capitalized, then we'll simply be returning the name. So this is the syntax of getter method. And similarly for setter we have public, and for setter the return type will be void. And for set, first of all we'll have to use set, then first letter will be capitalized for this set name, and this will accept an argument of the variable or the value which we want to assign. Oops, I'm sorry. And there will be one instance variable, which is, this is our instance variable name, to which we want to give or assign the value to. So this will be this dot name equals this name. So essentially whenever we'll be calling the setter method of this Pojo, like suppose if I call a setter method on this object, suppose b dot set name, and I pass in any value, suppose I pass in John, then this value will reach this variable name, and with the help of this variable will initialize the instance variable. That is, instance variable means this variable of this class name. This refers to this dot name means it is referring to the instance variable of this class, and in turn this variable will be initialized, and after setting the name, when we'll be calling the get name, essentially we'll be retrieving the value. So these are basic simple Pojos in Java. In Java, and Hibernate in Hibernate we basically use Pojos. So coming back to our slide, and the next advantage is Spring is a well-defined or well-designed web MVC framework which provides a great alternative to web frameworks such as struts or other over-engineered or less popular frameworks. And if you must know, MVC is a model view controller pattern, and if you must have worked on servlet, then you must have known what is MVC framework. And if you don't know MVC framework, don't worry, we'll discuss again in this tutorial. And MVC framework basically defines a particular purpose to a servlet class or a view, and we'll be discussing in this later tutorial. And the next is Spring provides a convenient API to translate technology specific exceptions thrown by JDBC, Hibernate or JDO for example. And as it says, Spring provides a convenient application programmable interface to basically handle all the exceptions. Suppose if you have any JDBC exception, and if you have any exception thrown due to Hibernates and all. Hibernate is also an API which is used to connect to the database like JDBC, and it is an extension of JDBC. And the last one of the advantages is that Spring provides a consistent transaction management. Spring also deals with the transaction management, and it has a JTA, that is Java Transaction API, which deals with the transaction mechanism in Springs. So these were some of the advantages of Springs, and these days this is one of the most popular framework which is used to develop the Java EE applications. And next is inversion of control, that is IOC. And before discussing IOC, we need to discuss polymorphism in Java. So we'll discuss a bit about polymorphism in Java, and during this tutorial we'll be using Eclipse as our base platform to develop the application. So first of all, we need to set up Eclipse. If you don't have Eclipse, don't worry, just download it from internet. Just open your web browser and just type in download Eclipse, and whatever the first link pops up, just open that link, and here you can see there are various releases for it, and we can download any one of them. Select the Windows version which you want to download, and I'll be downloading this. Or there's one alternate link, just click on this link, www.eclipse.org download. You can download easily from here. Just select your Windows. If it's 32-bit, just click on 32 bits, and if it is 64, just click on 64-bit version. So now I have clicked on download. Now it's downloading it for me, and I'll connect again once the download is finished and once my Eclipse is up.